Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Wednesday, May the 15th, 2024. Yesterday, I introduced the fact that we'll be looking at 1 Corinthians 15, and we talked about verse 3 yesterday, where Paul writes, "For I handed on to you as of first importance what I in turn had received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures." And kind of with still linking up the whole idea of Mother's Day, told some stories of a mother's love. 3 instances where they were willing to sacrifice their own lives for their child. Then verse 4, however, that I want to look at today says, Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures. And verse 3, verse 4, and that he was buried and that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures. So Christ died, but Christ rose again. That's the Easter message. This past Sunday was the 7th Sunday of Easter, completing the Easter season. It seems, as I suggested in my sermon, that it's appropriate to kind of go back to the beginning and say, what's this all about? It's about the resurrection. The late Joseph Haratunian, who was of Armenian descent and was a longtime professor at McCormick Theological Seminary, was one day approached by a well-meaning friend who said, "Your name is so difficult to pronounce and difficult to spell, it could probably hurt your professional career. Why don't you change your name to something like Harwood or Harwell or something like that?" And Dr. Haratunian asked, "Well, what do those names mean?" And his friend said, "Well, nothing. They're just easier to remember." And Dr. Haratunian said, "In Armenia, when my grandfather was baptized, they named him Haratunian, which means resurrection. I am Joseph Haratunian, and I will be a son of the resurrection all my days." John R.W. Stott once wrote, "Christianity is in its very essence a resurrection religion. The concept of resurrection lies at its heart. If you remove it, Christianity is destroyed." New Testament scholar N.T. Wright, I always think that's funny because the abbreviation for New Testament is N.T. N.T. Wright has had this to say about the subject. Why did Christianity arise, and why did it take the shape that it did? The early Christians themselves reply, "We exist because of Jesus' resurrection." There is no evidence for a form of early Christianity, he writes, in which the resurrection was not a central belief, nor was this belief, as it were, bolted onto Christianity at the edge. It was the central driving force informing the whole movement. And in a similar vein, Lloyd Ogilvie writes, "Like the first disciples, our greatest need is not just to see or hear about the resurrection, but to have the resurrection happen to us." Again, Ogilvie writes, "The most powerful historical proof of the resurrection is the resurrected disciples. Dull, defeated people became fearless, adventuresome leaders. Cowards became courageous. The timid became triumphant. The inept did the impossible. He is risen became the joyous chant of a new life without limits." The resurrection, again, is central to our Christian faith. And it's interesting that every Sunday is kind of a little Easter because we remember weekly. Certainly, it should be daily as well, but at the very least weekly, we're reminded of the resurrection. There's a true story told about a distinguished gentleman who was the only white person ever buried in a Georgia cemetery reserved exclusively for blacks. Apparently, he had lost his mother when he was just a baby, and his father, who never married again, hired a black woman named Mandy to help raise his son. She was a devout Christian. She took her task very seriously of raising the boy. Seldom has a motherless boy received such warm-hearted attention. Well, one of his earliest memories was of this Mandy bending tenderly over him in his upstairs bedroom each day and softly saying, "Wake up, God's morning is a-comin'." As the years passed, this devout woman continued to serve as his substitute mother. And the young man went away to college, but when he would come home each holiday and summer, she would climb the stairs more slowly now and call him in the same loving way. Well, one day after he had become a successful statesman, the sad message came. Mandy is dead. Can you attend her funeral? And as he stood by her grave in the cemetery, he turned to his friends and he said, if I die before Jesus comes, I want to be buried here right beside Mandy. I'd like to think that on Resurrection Day, she'll speak to me again and say, wake up, my boy. God's morning is come. That sentiment expressed by this grateful man rings true, but it will be the Lord who says that to us. Awake, my children. Morning is come. And as Ferdinand Funk writes, that's the hope of every Christian. That is our Christian hope. That is our Easter hope. Hope you have a great day today, and we'll be back again with you tomorrow. Until then, take care. Bye.